Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to our panel talk exploring the intersection of marketing ops and community ops. My name is Naya and I am the community events manager at ComSor and for the community club. If this is your first time attending a community club event, welcome. The community club is the community for community builders, and I feel like I just said community a lot, but it's because it's really important to us. So come hang out with us if you want to level up in your career through our multitude of offerings. I won't get into it too much right now. I'll just drop the link in the chat. And for those of you who are like me, which means you show up to every single one of our events, welcome back. I'm really excited for this conversation today. Our guests are amazing. They've got tons of expertise that they are going to share. And I also encourage all of you to pick their brains and think of questions because we will have time for Q&A afterwards. With that, I am excited to turn it over to our lovely moderator, who also happens to teach our self-paced community operations course, shameless plug. I'll also drop the link for that in the chat. But without further ado, Tiffany, please take it away.
Thanks, Naya, and thank you for the plug. I didn't have to do it, which makes my life a lot easier. Hi, everyone. I am Tiffany Oda. I am based in San Francisco. I am the Director of Community Operations for a cybersecurity called Venafi, previously at Salesforce on the Trailblazer community team. And I am also the co-leader and co-founder for Community Observations, which is a monthly meetup fun kind of community group where we talk about community operations. And most importantly, I would like to introduce all of our panelists. So panelists, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves in alphabetical order. So Dan, if you'd like to go first.
I guess Dan C.
Yeah,
Daniel,
Dan
so
C.
that'll be me. So yeah, I'm Dan. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships and Events at Chili Piper. Chili Piper is a company that is a suite of tools that'll double your inbound conversion rates. We view community probably different from a lot of folks here. We have one community effort that sits within CS and another within marketing, and really excited to share with everyone here and learn as well.
Sounds great. Daniel?
Yeah, hey, Daniel Murray here. I am a solutions consultant at Clearbit, and I focus on marketing operations. I previously ran marketing operations at ServiceTitan. I also run the Marketing Millennials page on LinkedIn and podcast if you've ever heard of that. So excited to be here.
Very nice. After D is M, Mike.
Hey everybody, I am Mike Rizzo. I'm the founder of MoPros, which stands for Marketing Operations Professionals. And soon we'll be launching marketingops.com, which is why you see the shameless plug behind me on my wall now. We are a community of over 2,500 marketing ops pros that started back in 2017. And every single day we are trying to elevate the profession and the space. And I'm really excited to hang out with all the community experts here because I'm in the business of marketing ops and community, and I have a lot to learn from all these folks. So glad you're all here.
I love all these shameless plugs. I think we should try and incorporate as many of them in this panel as possible. All right, Rachel.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel, and I am the Community Operations Manager at Zapier. And previously, I was at Pragmatic Institute as a community tactician, which is a job that I made up. And then unmade up as I left to be in community ops, which is my heart song. And I'm thrilled to be chatting with everybody today. And my shameless plug, I'm teasing it. It'll come during the panelist talk. So I will send a link out to some relevant stuff that I've written about this very topic.
Love it. And last but not least, Steph.
Hi all, I'm Stephanie Nakano. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am leading up community at a company called Coda.io. It's a collaboration platform specifically within doc making. We do cater to a lot of low code and no coders out there. Before Coda, I was on the community team at Zapier. So big shout out to Rachel and my former colleagues who are in this event. Still love y'all, still support y'all and everything that you want to do with community. Always watching from afar and never too far behind y'all. Thrilled to be here and hope to offer my 5 years of online marketing, including social media, and coming up on 12 years in community ops, and community support.
Very nice. Also would love to see from our participants, our attendees, who is in marketing ops or who's in community and how they dabble in between the two. So if you want to throw any of your experience and kind of like what side of the line you fall on, or if you have a foot on both sides, just to see who our audience is here as well. So starting off, let's start with the basics. What is marketing operations and what is community operations? Mike, do you want to start us off by kind of giving us an introduction about what marketing operations is?
Wow, yes. As if I shouldn't have been prepared for this question. Look, marketing operations is a lot of things. And I think much like in the community ops space, we are struggling every day to create a more clear definition for our colleagues around the world, as well as our leadership teams that we work with, to understand the value of marketing ops. At its core, it's about connecting the people, the unique business processes and systems within an organization, and all of that with the technologies that enable the growth and success of a business, right? And so every single stage of an organization will encounter new and different challenges with adopting technology to fit their business needs. And a marketing ops role is to, be that bridge, right, and help make that possible. I don't know, Daniel, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I would add that, and this is because I'm pushing for this to be more known, is that the marketing ops professional is the strategic advisor to the marketing leaders. We help see the whole picture of how marketing is running. So I like to see it in two buckets, which is process, and process includes the technology, how the buyer journey, and helping that and the people. And then the other side is insights, which is becoming more and more marketing ops purview, which is how the data flows through the systems, and how can we provide valuable insights to our marketing leaders to make better marketing decisions. So really, I'm fighting for us to go from a support function, which a lot of orgs know that us as, to a strategic advisor. And I think most companies are moving that way, but it's still a lot of companies that see marketing ops as a support function.
Gotcha. And then just diving into that a little bit deeper, can you, maybe Dan, you can answer this one. Have you worked on a recent marketing ops project recently that you can give an example of, like, what's something that a marketing operations person would do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a solutions consultant now, so I deal with a bunch of marketing ops teams now. And the main projects I see is, how can all our systems integrate with each other? Like, how could they all talk to each other? How could do I have the right systems in my stack? Do I not have the right systems in my stack? How could I make the experience more optimized for marketers and the buyer? So a lot of people are looking at what tools fit most with their marketing goals, what insights do we need out of these tools to be better at marketing. So a lot of it is looking at the big picture and seeing how all these tools connect and how all the data flows through those tools.
That sounds very familiar. Moving over to the community operations side, Rachel, do you want to give us a basic community operations 101 definition?
Oh, sure. I'll do my best attempt at it. Tiffany, one of your favorite metaphors that I lean on all the time is like the front of house, back of house one. And I think that's so helpful to think about, that community touches so many things. And my role in ops is to make sure that everybody gets what they need as effectively and efficiently as possible. That's both inside our community team, so helping with special projects, helping with things like metrics and vendor stuff, and like back-end UX UI. And it also means collaborating outside of the community team and making sure that I am the sole point of contact for any requests that are coming and going, and I'm making sure that those trains get to where they need to go on time. So that's just like the central point and the like conductor of all of these little pieces of community, and making sure that we're all kind of working off of the same shared language.
I love that conductor analogy. Steph, anything to add? And do you have a recent kind of a community operations project or initiative that you can give an example of?
Absolutely. And to add everything that Rachel had mentioned, community has a new effort of realizing that we have to optimize those voices. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of groups. There's a lot of signals. Community ops, we bring those signals and voices into existing and new systems that continue to support the community. And what that means is, what are these systems, right? Like, let's just be frank about it. These systems are everything from the platform, the tooling, the automation, and even the systems in which we help the community grow, right? And again, Rachel was much more succinct and breaking that down and like what our day-to-day looks like. But as far as a project, I think everybody in this chat can relate to this too, is community ops, although we're not like known for it, but we will be known for it, is handling community migrations. Sometimes a community will outgrow its current home and it will need a new home. The future of community ops, at least one part of it, is to handle how these homes are transferred, like everything inside, from the furniture, the furnishings, the colors that make the home very warm, everything that goes into community, that is part of migrations and the community ops side of the house, right? And that's just something that I did more recently, even at Zapier and even now at Coda, where we look at the fitment of these communities in its current form. And that's a project that community ops handles.
So true. And Dancy, you are Director of Partnerships, Community, and Social Media. So it sounds like you have a foot on both sides of the line. Can you provide some examples of kind of where the two worlds intersect? And, you know, have you done any recent projects where you are dabbling in both marketing operations and community operations responsibilities?
Yeah, so those projects dominate my life, as they do for a lot of folks. In the past, before Chili Piper, I was also the general manager at a community called Modern Sales Pros. And a lot of what I find is the need for community ops is around tracking the health of your community and the attribution for the results that come from it. Because I think a lot of the folks here focus on customer communities, or, you know, half of them. But for me, it's more focused on marketing. And what we found is that by creating creative ways through ops to track attribution from communities, we're able to operate in a space that others can't, because we can do marketing without tying a UTM link to it. There are a couple ways that we do this. One is talent referrals. So sometimes I find with communities that people focus more on like the revenue pipeline or like the upsell side of it, when a huge amount of our hiring comes from communities. We had 29,000 applications to Chili Piper last year. So working with our ops team, our people ops team, to ensure that that's tracked from the community allows us to have more budget to engage in these communities. Another thing we try to do is determine who all of our advocates are within each community. So a big project I did recently was we analyzed our ICP. Then we mapped out every single community where our ICP is hanging out, sharing information with each other. From there, we took all of our customers who are active within that community and put them into one sheet. It's like a customer advocacy cheat sheet for our whole company. And this enables us to ensure that we're well represented across all of the communities, but in a way that's not chilly. It's like people just trying to provide value because they're authentic, organic champions versus someone we said, hey, go say this. There are a million projects, but those are two that are kind of pressing right now.
Sounds awesome. Very cool. Now, in the community operations and the marketing operations world, it sounds like we are kind of having to work with multiple stakeholders, multiple partners, and other teams across the organization. So can you provide some light, let's go with Mike, in terms of, you know, how marketing operations people tend to navigate and how they work with different teams across the company?
Sure. I would say it sort of depends on the need of the business at the time. And I would also say the maturity of the organization. You know, first and foremost, I would say marketing operations is immediately connected to the sales team, like right out of the gate. because part of your measurement is throughput on, whether that's an MQL, marketing qualified lead, or something like that gets passed to the sales organization. But the goal is to first get in alignment with what does that really look like? Why would we want to send a lead, and when would we want to send a lead over to that sales organization? Which sort of to the point that was being made earlier around sort of being that central resource for everyone internally. Marketing ops is supposed to function much in that way as well. So how do we create that alignment, set those rules up, and then go build those into the work streams, right? The technologies to better enable that connection across the organization. And then from there, I think where marketing ops has an opportunity to continue to grow is to start thinking much like the way we were talking about earlier, community ops person does around internal sort of resourcing. Is marketing ops doesn't just stop with sales. Like, you should be talking to the client success organization and the support organization and see if there's ways that you can support them with the rules and the technologies and the platforms that they're leveraging, and make sure that at the end of the day, your broader community, your clients, your customers, however you choose to refer to them, are getting the right experience by providing the right information internally to the people at the right time. So don't overinvest in multiple solutions, right? Like, there's no reason to have client success using a sales outreach solution and sales using something totally different, or maybe a calendar booking solution. But let's all get on the same page. And so, sorry, I kind of rambled there. But
No, I think that was really insightful. And so, it sounds like as you're working with people across the company, it's really important to get buy-in from, your company leadership, other stakeholders, not only in terms of support for your team and what you do, but I guess understanding the role and the impact and the value that you can bring to the organization. So Rachel, do you have any insight into, how, or experience or stories that you can share in terms of how you've, gotten that buy-in from executives and others across the company as you're working with them?
Yes, in fact, I do. And I just have, this is my shameless plug that I wrote about this very week for ComSor and their guild, which is should the community manager be the sole owner of the community? My working title was 99 red dotted lines, about like all of the dotted lines the community can report to. And some of the success I've had is really in being a crafty storyteller, and also making sure that I come from the place that people don't know what the community is, and they need to be like told how this magical picture will come together. I also always work under, there was a question on the article about, well, like, how much are you asking it to be a two-way street? And in a perfect world, when people see community value, they, yes, I want to invest. But I don't mind in my role of saying, look, I don't mind providing you the value up front. I don't mind proving to you that this is a worthwhile solution and that this is what we should be targeting for. I also don't mind coexisting with social and with other places that we want to be talking and like listening to our folks. And so thinking about those stories, thinking about all of the problems we can solve, and being very like optimistic and consistent are both things that I'll be willing to do. So for a sales team, I understand that you're thinking about like a pipeline that community is at the very bottom of. If I can just like make it on your radar to just like check into what's happening once a month, that's a super win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just jump on that for just a second? That,
of course.
When I had a moment of, I boomeranged back to Maven Link in a past role where I was asked to build community and client advisory board. And one of the challenges we faced was exactly what you're talking about, as far as like telling a story, getting people. It was the first time we'd ever launched community or client advisory, right? And so my hope was that we could actually get the sales organization to start positioning community not as like a reason to buy necessarily, but as like an actual value add resource that we believe in as an organization, right? and that only happens when you can convince the sales org that there really is something here that you can value. Oh, look, my little community is coming in my room.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think we have a little bit of a different setup at Chili Piper because I do report directly to our CEO, and actually social media, events, and customer marketing, as well as PR, sits under community at our team, a team of 7. So what we've found, yeah, it's pretty weird. And then our customer community sits under our digital director of customer success, which is separate, but we like work together really closely. But what we found that's really helpful is like surveying your customers. So we surveyed all of our customers from 2021. How did you first hear of us? And 40% said social and 20% said community. So when you have something like that, or even a on your demo request page, like, how did you do this? Or like, what caused you to want to evaluate a new product? Or like, what brought you further into being a customer champion if you're dealing with a customer success group? Like, just having data on that, you often have to survey for it because they're not going to like put a UTM in the community. But when you have that data, it makes it a lot easier to get buy-in for sure. And that's what's happened at Chili Piper.
Wow. All right. And this next question, Steph, why don't you go ahead and take this? It sounds like you've, had a previous life in marketing, and now you're obviously in community. How do you tend to see organizations with regards to the marketing and community collaboration? So if, have you seen marketing teams with dedicated marketing operations people on it and communities with community operations people? And how do you as a community operations person tend to kind of, tread that line and work together collaboratively with marketing and marketing operations?
So really good question.
It was wordy, sorry.
I love wordy questions because it gives me a chance to like ramble on, right? That said, I think that marketing groups, specifically product marketing, are amazing groups to work with in collaboration with community. That being said, is that it leads to opportunities on communities like ideation, product feedback, upvoting for ideas and thoughts, or possibly spurring up beta test groups, or really closing in that knowledge gap that product and marketing could use. So in my perspective as a community ops person, I think those are prime areas to be completely that conduit between our community, product, and marketing, right? So we sit in the center, and what I feel that is super beneficial and why I think that it's really like up and coming is that marketing is not going to go out of their way to speak or try to understand the community. Not to say that they don't want to, not to say that there's no interest, but the time consumption and the nuances and understanding of how a community is very daunting when you just try to overexpose it to a group of people who are like really focused in on like the branding, the marketing and the outreach, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that that's something that community ops provides value in, is that we can hone in on those signals. We can like target those signals, and we can refine those signals on behalf of marketing, on behalf of product, and then translate that into action and even engagement on the community. Mm-hmm. And well, I don't even know why engagement didn't pop in my head, right? Like of all the things that didn't pop in, but my point is that community ops helps the community become a source of information for marketing. And then we can take that back and forth, right? It can translate into email newsletter campaigns. It can translate into focused user groups. It can translate into like understanding how our community members use our swag store, mm-hmm. and so many different components that marketing would otherwise maybe spend in external research groups, or heavily rely on UX or UI research, which is not really their area of expertise. And I know user research is very broad and defined, but community is very targeted, right? This is your exact focus. So I think that that's where the symbiotic relationship between the two groups and like how it could really manifest.
Yeah, great.
I totally agree with that. Just putting that out there. And I think you being a champion, like I think when I say you, not like you specifically, Stephanie, although I'm sure you are. I just mean like,
you.
yeah, the proverbial you and us and we. Like, I have this unique role, right, where I'm a community ops person and marketing ops person all at the same time. And like at the end of the day, when I wear the hat of this community operations community manager champion, it's make sure your community is receiving the right value. And that, because of the 99 dotted lines of the ways in which community can be tied to all of these different departments, is like, this is not a place to cross-sell and upsell all day long. It is a place to learn, to figure out how to do that in a more organic way. And you can create intentional programs to do so, but it is not a channel to do sales through, which gets us to this whole idea of like, how do you prove ROI on community and all this other stuff, right? Which becomes incredibly difficult. Marketing ops people are faced with that exact same challenge often. But I think like your purview on like making sure there's a boundary and a protection around the community is like, you know, one of the number one jobs for whether it's community ops or community manager, it sort of doesn't matter. So anyway, I love everything you said.
And to piggyback on that, Mike, you know, I've sold $1 million of community sponsorships when I was at MSP running them, and I've bought $1 million worth of community sponsorships at Chili Piper. And what sponsors want is to know that it's a safe space, that it's not going to be a space where all your competitors' sales reps are there, like poaching your clients, that you can add your customers to a community without being afraid. So I agree, like, don't sell directly, but if you have your passionate customers in there and they want to evangelize what they believe in, that's probably a more organic way to represent your brand across these communities. It does lead to pipeline, but just not necessarily trackable.
Dan C, you mentioned in chat, would love to hear, you know, it sounds like you work with a lot of different organizations and have a really high overview on how the two intersect together. Do you want to dive in on their comments a little more detail?
Yeah, sure. So like, for us, as I said earlier, like part of our community strategy and operations is figuring out which communities we should be involved in, because we have a cross-community evangelism strategy. We decided, I was tasked with building, you know, Mike's community, and I was like, I met Mike and met a bunch of other people, and I was like, why are we doing this? Like, why don't we just partner with them instead? So now, once we know all the communities that are mapped to our ICP, we can use these communities to determine what our ICP cares about. So Mike, actually, you probably remember this. I hit you up 3 weeks ago and I'm like, give me the top 5 most popular threads from MoPros. We did that across 7 communities, aggregated all the threads, shared them with our content team, and it informs their content calendar going forward, because we know this is like pre-verified high value content. Daniel Murray, it actually reminds me of Marketing Millennials in a little bit. Like what Daniel does is brilliant. They take, and you can say it better, but my understanding of it is they take pre-viral content from Twitter that we know is going to perform really well and then repurpose it to LinkedIn. For me, I use Marketing Millennials as like LinkedIn's window into marketing Twitter. So we do the same thing with the communities, because we know if there's a thread with 40 responses on it, people care about it. And we know the people replying to those threads care about it. So if there's a thread with 40 revenue ops people, you know, revenue ops people by Chili Piper, we're going to want to talk about that or write content around that.
Definitely. Daniel M, do you want to jump in a little bit and deep dive on the Marketing Millennials and maybe any, you know, trends that you've seen in the space and what people have been talking about lately?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off what he just said, is like, I think the only way to be able to get and know what works is being in marketing Twitter community. I think like what he's doing with looking in multiple communities, I think you have to be active in a community to know what content is resonating and what's content is resonating today versus like that's old and you can't use again. So I think like me being on marketing Twitter, understanding which has built their own community inside of Twitter, you understand that. So on that point on that, but I think a lot of trends right now, I think community has been the trend for the last like year and a half on Twitter. And I just don't think, I think people mistake what actually community is. I think they mistake it with audience, they mistake it with followers, they mistake it with, and I think there's I think this conversation is good to bring light to what actually goes into community. It's not just someone growing a following. It's not someone just growing an audience. It's actually so much more than that. And there's so much things that go behind the scenes to make an actual community like MoPro's work, or Chili Piper's community, or Zapier's community. All these communities that you all have built, it takes so much time, effort to bring people into that and create conversations that are actually valuable and ongoing. And you see that with, and the rise of Web3 in communities, or even making communities are more prevalent, like in all these Discord groups and stuff like that. So I think Web3 has done something great for communities, because it's shown like the importance of how communities could leverage and make a product go viral and make a product be actually useful for people to use.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the, the setup and the behind the scenes. There's so much work and foundation and, groundwork to build something that will have that impact and, be able to show that sense of community. I had lunch with a couple community people yesterday, and we were talking about how people just don't understand what community is. And we were trying to think of another word, and we just couldn't. But, I think there's still a lot of educating, and, there's a lot of interest in the field, both in marketing operations and community operations. It's just getting that awareness out there and getting that education. So kind of touching upon that, I'm sure there are people in the audience who are interested in maybe looking into getting into marketing operations or community operations as a profession. And this is an open question for all of y'all, do you have any recommendations on, what kind of skill sets and what kind of previous experience would be really good, I guess, like entry way into community operations or marketing operations?
So shameless plug for Mike here. If anyone is already a marketing ops person, maybe you're a junior level and you want to level up, Chili Piper will pay for your membership for MoPros for the first year if you're in the audience now. So that's what I would suggest. Find a community of rev ops, of marketing ops folks, and then join it if you can. And we'll pay for your membership.
Yeah. And I would add, just like, attach yourself to someone who is like 2 years older than you in your career. That if it's a marketing ops person, don't go for the director of marketing ops. Go for like that marketing operations specialist or that marketing operations manager, to learn from them and have them give them the insights. Because I think like they're in the weeds today and they can give you advice today, where someone who's a director can give you advice as a director, but it won't be prevalent to what you are today as a marketer. So find someone who you can attach it that's really 2 years ahead in their career that you can attach yourself with.
Tiffany, first, can I just say I'm so jealous of you getting lunch with people like that. I like, in my brain, I'm like, one day I'll like sit down at a table across from somebody.
That totally went through my head too. When she said that, I was like, lucky.
Yeah, I'll get there. From the community side, I think what Steph put in is very relevant and like true. And I think that we're really lucky that the consistency is getting there. We're getting better about having roles that are clearly defined and like present. I think that advocating for things, one of the things that was really helpful for me as a sort of tangential benefit at being at Pragmatic was getting product training. So as a community person thinking about product and thinking about like how you can operationalize a like launch or, like building a new product line was really helpful, because I had been saturated in just community and what community can do. And now that I have like a little bit of project management and a little bit of product management experience, I think those are highly applicable skills that just by a different name, how we do them. Also, there's some resources out there. I mean, I feel like the space is just so like healthy right now with, like research that's coming out and conversations that are happening and people like all of us on this call who are willing to like, hey, you want to like grab 30 minutes with me and like chat about, like what options are out there, like happy to do that. So.
Nice. Anyone else have any other suggestions for people who are looking to get into the field before we move on?
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I do some Googling, read some stuff, I think, gosh, there's like The Business of Belonging, there's People Powered by Jonna Bacon. There's a number of thought leaders that are out there on the community side that can sort of, I really like People Powered, by the way, like the way that it's like given as like a high level overview on how to sort of stair step your way and thinking about the operational programs that a community needs to have. I think will sort of help you have a framework understanding of like the operational sort of function of community, the same way that a marketing ops person is responsible for thinking about lifecycle management, a community ops person is sort of responsible for that lifecycle management inside the community. And then to sort of echo what Daniel was saying, just try to find some folks, peers. There's programs out there to be connected with others and have those meetings, right? Try to find that mentor, so to speak. You don't have to be formal about it. They don't have to identify as your mentor. But gosh, if you meet someone and you like them, just keep trying to have a regular conversation.
Yeah, and that finding a mentor is so huge. It's been tremendously beneficial for me, and it also depends on like who your boss is, because like in most cases in the community space, your boss is not going to be a community expert because there just aren't that many people. They hire you to be the community expert. Yep. The one caveat I'd add to what Daniel and Mike said is like when you find that mentor, make sure their community is actually a community, because there are a lot of people out there who have great titles in a seemingly great community, but all it is a message board where customers ask questions and then a paid employee from that company answers them. That is not a community. That is a message board with an admin who's paid. A community manager has managed to get people whose job is not to reply to that, to interact with each other in an authentic way. That is the person that you want to be your mentor.
Absolutely. And then even just going into kind of like basic skill sets, I think there's a lot of overlap between, you know, maybe just like some innate skills and qualifications that someone could have that would lead to a very successful career in marketing operations and community operations. So I know that, Steph, you mentioned community project manager. What other kind of, you know, really good skills are needed to be successful in the role?
I know that everybody here already mentioned the mentor path and then following somebody who, you know, maybe been a few years above them in the path. Unfortunately, that was not available when I was coming into the community space. And I know that to everybody's point here, that it's not always readily available at every company. So I wanted to offer some alternative options for people to consider if they want to get into community ops in particular. That said, is if you have a interest in support, specifically user or technical support is very handy in coming up on community ops. Also, if you are a product specialist, amazing skill set to have as a community ops person. Also, if you have any past experience as a researcher of any sort, also amazing skill set to have. And I think that one that I in particular feel is not really like a traditional thing to go into community ops about is definitely being a marketer. Believe it or not, coming from that background has really prepared me to look, to think, and to be able to communicate to marketing groups much more effectively than my counterparts who maybe started out directly in community. So I wanted to be upfront that if community ops is not a direct path, there are other highly relatable skill sets, highly relatable roles that lead to community ops.
To echo that, I mean, absolutely. You know, when I first came into the space, very similar, very like amorphous, and you're just sort of like, I'm going to figure this out. For me, I also think this conversation comes up all the time of like skills for community managers. And I have a background in sociology and social work and dealing with really vulnerable populations, particularly teenagers and voices of recovery, and having deep empathy and understanding of like other perspectives other than your own and questioning those and being curious and empathetic. Like those are skills that come up time and time again. It's tough because you can't get like a LinkedIn certificate that's like, I'm empathetic. But I think like if you start and you think about like, so if I'm hiring a new community ops person, I might think of somebody that would, maybe have a non-traditional path, but somebody who's demonstrated a real ability to connect with people. And because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're like a very human element of our work. And so somebody who can like think through those problems would be also of interest.
I think social work is like the perfect background for it, because the community managers or like your community operations folks, it's not necessarily doing all the stuff yourself. This is maybe more community manager than community ops, to be honest. But it's like, you can't do the work yourself. Your job is to get other people to do the things. So it's like invariably like volunteer management, being a teacher, building your own little fan base on social media. These are all indicators that people are good at getting other people to do stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions that I get very frequently is, where does community operations fit on, I'm obviously in CommOps, so that's my side, but where does it fit in the team? How do you build your team structure to include community operations and find that balance between, community management, moderation, engagement, and operations? Like, how do you hire for all of that when you have limited resources and, limited headcount? How do, both for marketing operations and community operations, do you think the perfect kind of like team organizational structure is? Do you have a, I guess for a team of, let's say 4 or 5, what other roles are there that you work closely with, and how do you navigate and work with everybody on your team?
I'm volunteering Daniel to answer this first.
I'll start off with, in marketing ops, you'll be lucky if you have more than one person, which is scary, and that's hard to get resources. I think you have the orgs that understand marketing ops are the ones that normally supply resources, but you really have to be that, in like we talked about, for a good internal salesperson of like why you need resources and why it's going to be valuable to the org. And I also think it's dependent on where that person sits in an organization. If they sit in marketing versus rev ops versus some other part of the organization, it's also easy. But I think for me, what I used to do is I used to partner with the marketing leaders, because I was on a RevOps team, and say, hey, send me the list of 30 tasks you want to be done. And they would send it over to me, and I'd be like, look, we can't I don't have the bandwidth to do these 30 tasks. We either can hire someone or that's not going to be done. So let me know if you want me to hire someone or not. So I had to build a proof before, and go and sell it to my manager or other leaders. Like, this is not going to get done. This is how much the revenue impact if you don't have another person on my team. But that takes like time and effort to like get that. I think most marketing ops people are lucky to have one person under them, which is a truth, and probably the same as community ops as well.
I'm trying to get this. Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Rachel. Please.
I was just going to say that I feel really grateful that the Zapier team is by far the largest community team I've worked with. And actually, Tiffany, I was wondering if you have any thoughts about like borrowed resources and how we feel, like, because I feel like sometimes torn about that. Like, I don't mind internally evangelizing, like, hey, can I like sneak a little bit of your time in the community? But at the same time, I find that dichotomy a little bit troublesome, because I don't want to always be like, please give me like 10 minutes of your, like, I wonder what the choreography looks like, because on our team, it's so invested and so like deeply embedded that our team is what it is. On other communities I've worked on, it has been absolutely no more than a team of 2. And, how do you narrativize like, okay, if we're a team of 2, these are the things we can do, and these are the things we just won't be able to do with this headcount.
I love that you're turning it back on me. I do think that that leads to a perfect use case for road mapping and capacity planning. So being able to really clearly lay out, these are the initiatives that we have going on in the future. This is when they're taking place relative to one another. And this is the amount of bandwidth it would take for our team to do. And then show the comparison of like, this is what we can do with full capacity. If we get another headcount or another 2 headcount, how the hours would play out. If we don't get this, these are the programs that are getting scrapped. Like, we will not be able to do this and be able to show, the value afterwards. So for example, this year we didn't get our a headcount that we wanted in time. So we had to scrap launching our user group program and our top contributor program. And we're focusing on the online community. And so by only focusing on the online community, we're losing that in-person engagement. We're losing the ability to look at contributions that our most active community members are doing. And there's sacrifices that you need to make. So surfacing that, I think is really important. Also, I don't think that there's any shame in asking for shared resources. And so, if you need to have a developer help you on some custom code for something, or, you need a designer to help create a banner or a graphic for something, or a copywriter, being able to have that roadmap and share in advance, hey, I'm going to need some support from your team Q2. That way they can help allocate some time for it. And it's not like a scramble where, they might not be able to provide help for you at that time.
I knew you'd have a great answer to that. I'm so happy I asked.
All right. So
for folks who might, go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it. I want to
I'll just 2 seconds. We're smaller. We don't have a 40-person community team, but we're growing our events team. Events sits under community for us. In a lot of cases, if you're sponsoring these other communities, the manifestation of that is going to be events. So one workaround that I'm trying to do is hire like a field marketing operations person who also does community ops, but justifying it by looking at the ramp in our event schedule, where it's like, you want us to do 5 in-person dinners per month? Well, like, we need an ops person for that. So that's how we're doing it. I hope the hire gets approved.
Us too. All right, so I know that we're at 9 minutes left until the top of the hour. I would love to hear all of your insights in terms of kind of the trends of where you see this field going. So both for marketing ops and community ops. I think there's really good traction in the up and to the right direction, but would love to hear a little bit more tactfully also, like, what are the next trends and upcoming things that you are hoping to see from your industries? Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. Marketing ops, I think, it's been around for quite a while. Truthfully, it's been more like shadow ops. You didn't know you were doing marketing ops and people sort of fell into the role. It's been more clearly-ish defined. And so I'd say the trend is, at least what we're working on from sort of that community-led model, is how do we create clearer definitions of maybe different functions, skill sets, and sort of the roadmap to where do you go from, coordinator on up to VP, and what is a VP really responsible for in VP of marketing ops? Mm-hmm. Is there a path to CMO? Many are arguing yes. Is that for everybody? Many are arguing no. And so, I see a trend in creating definition around you can be a technical person that can earn a healthy salary that doesn't need to be a people manager. But you can be a people manager that moves up as well and understands strategically what the business needs from a go-to-market technology execution perspective, and be an advisor to the business. And sort of touching back on what we were just talking about, like, you cannot advocate for headcount, you cannot advocate for more people or any of those things until you get ingrained into the business and understand the needs of your stakeholders, which are the rest of the teams that you interact with. By understanding those needs, you can propose different strategies and growth programs for marketing operations, as well as some of the other components of the business. And I see, much like Daniel said at the very beginning of all of this, I definitely see the marketing operations professional having a clearer sense of, do I want to be a strategic leader, broadly skilled across lots of areas of marketing and technology? Or do I want to be a more deeply technical professional that doesn't need to be at the senior leadership level, but is really an enabler? And we're trying our best to shape that future. So that's the path we're on right now.
Rachel, what kind of trends and hopes do you have for the future of community operations?
Well, it's funny. It really parallels some of what Mike was saying, because I personally want to move as far in as an individual contributor as I possibly can. And so that to me means leveraging a deeper subject matter expertise on my team and being an internal consultant rather than the like very natural path of like people management, chief community officer. I think we keep seeing chief community officer come up. I think that it will like be there, but for operations, what I would love to see is a more broad, like I would love to have a team of community ops, be a, like a senior manager of community operations, and like directing all of the moving pieces without necessarily being like executive level in that. And also really working, I think we're all sort of doing this at the same time in parallel of defining out like, okay, what is community ops specializing in? How can we get better at having educational resources that are defining this so that when I come in, I haven't had this happen in a long time, but I've come into interviews before and I've been like, oh, you don't know what you're hiring for. Like, I'm not your person and you don't know this. And this is a tough conversation. I think the like more we can reduce that confusion, especially in community, like what is community, what isn't community, that there'll just be deeper pathways that people can like sit in. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to someone who out of college can be like, oh, I really like community. Here's the steps I can take to be, like in this space.
You gave me goosebumps when you said someone coming out of college and like, I want to be in community. It's like, that's the goal.
I was just sitting here going, oh, the dream of having someone come out of college and saying, I want to do community ops or marketing ops or any of those things. Like, I will shamelessly plug that we are right now having conversations with colleges to try to figure this out. Like, we need this stuff to come in. And so I hope community is also getting that same attention, but man, that would be so cool.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
Dan C. Trends?
Yeah, so I might have a little bit of a different take than some folks here, but I actually believe that the way B2B companies do content is about to change, and social media, and that we're less likely to see people publish like long form blog content and then put like their webinar link out on social media, and more likely to see people invest in like building true advocates, operating in the dark funnel, empowering their customers, building their brand, getting subject matter experts who are their customers and having them engage organically. So you can't do that at scale without an operation. Like, people look at Chili Piper, all these people say great stuff about us on social all the time. It doesn't just happen. Like, you need to identify those people, where they are, build systems for supporting them, give them gifts, give them love, support their social content. The people who can operationalize that are going to be the people who stand out from a brand and content perspective over the next few years. So obviously, community operations is going to play a huge role in that. And I see good companies growing the size of their community operations teams, and actually content teams and social media teams getting direction from community and the insights drawn from communities.
Love that. Daniel M.
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier. I think the strategic advisor side of marketing ops, of becoming the strategic advisor, I do agree with Mike, though, that I think that there needs to be separate paths of someone who just wants to be deep technical and be an IC and grow as an IC for that, and then someone who wants to have a path to go to a CMO. Like, I think like right now there's not, like, if you talk to most people, like they'll say a CMO comes from like brand or demand gen, or like nobody ever says marketing ops. But I think the crazy thing about that is that marketing ops knows everything that's going on in the business. So it's like, I do see future like marketing ops leaders becoming CMOs if they're going down the path of that strategic advisor, because they understand the whole business, they understand numbers. And if you're a CMO, like the most thing you need to understand is numbers. Like it's not marketing, it's numbers and how they work. So I think that is one thing I think is a big trend. And another thing is that I think there's a lot of disruption in the tech stack like lately. And I think like you see like people who are stuck in like tech stacks 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And there's also customers that are moving to like more of a futuristic tech stack that's more lightweight. But the gap needs to be closed on getting people to understand the other parts of the tech stack, because I think there's a lot of people who understand Marketo and HubSpot and all the big tools. I think like more training on these other new tools that are coming out and marketers being able to learn that. I think there's a lot of cool innovations that I'm seeing every day on like how tech stacks are built. And I think the future of a tech stack is going to change in the next few years.
All right, and I know we're really close for time. Steph, do you have a single sentence or 2-sentence summary on what you think of the future of comm ops?
Just full validation that Dan C and Dan M, you are not taking a unique perspective. That's also my perspective. Support for brand influencers and content creators, tooling, specifically in intelligence, analytics, platform, and automation, enablement, of course, education and learning. And one other area I don't think we touch, which is trust and safety. I think that's the future of community ops, because in the future, when there's so many different communities in a decentralized model like Web 3.0, there's no way for one person to moderate that many communities or that many pieces of content. So there has to be a breaking point in which trust and safety becomes operationalized.
Great. All right, well, this has been an amazing conversation. I know we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for all of your amazing input. Naya, I'll pass it back to you to close us out.
Awesome. And thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to our audience members for being so engaged in the chat and for being a part of this conversation. I hope that it was insightful and that you've learned a lot today. I know that I did. But once again, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to our moderator, Tiffany. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're located.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.